Cause of all the traffic disruptions this morning?
Mayor, I don't know if I should say I wish I could take credit for that. That's not really what I meant. But with all of the traffic disruptions and traffic or roadway construction we have underway right now, most of you know that is 285-400 interchange construction right now. There are a couple of other projects that are truly about to begin in earnest here on our interstate system within Sandy Springs. And the one I would like to ask the GDOT team to come talk to you about tonight is the I-285 auxiliary lane extension project that adds an auxiliary lane from Roswell Road over to the Riverside interchange. You may recollect this project as one of the many bridge enhancements the city has supported. This project will replace the Mount Vernon Highway bridge over I-285 as a part of that. So without too many other details from me here tonight, Mr. Rick O'Hara and the project delivery team with GDOT is here to talk to you about the project and give you an update on where we are and what's coming next. So with that, Rick, if you could.
Welcome to our friends from GDOT.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Mayor, members of council, I appreciate the opportunity tonight. As Marty said, I'm Rick O'Hara. I'm in GDOT's Office of Alternative Delivery. I'm a program manager on design, build, and P3 projects. So the I-285 westbound auxiliary lane is one of three advanced improvement projects that came out of the MMIP projects in that program. The other two AIPs were the East Side Bridges over at Covington and Red Wing and Glenwood, and then also the Peachtree Industrial Boulevard interchange. So this is the last of the three. The other two are well into construction, and one of them is nearing completion. So this project will add about a 1.2-mile auxiliary lane extending from Roswell Road exit on-ramp up to Riverside Drive along the westbound lanes, north side. It will completely replace the Mount Vernon Bridge. It will also widen the bridge, the I-285 bridge over Long Island Drive. And these improvements, the idea is that we would get out ahead of the Express Lanes project. That way the public can benefit from some of the operational improvements and have fewer less impacts during the larger project when it comes through. These are separated out to be a lot quicker, a more accelerated schedule, and so the impacts reduced to the public. This project, Mount Vernon Bridge, during construction will be staged construction, so it will not be closed. There won't be a detour. Just be periodic lane closures associated with some of the work on the bridge. I've got a project location map here, which is, I think it's pretty clear. The majority of the work is along the north side of 285, along westbound lanes. It does extend a little bit on Long Island and along Mount Vernon for the bridge replacement. And then there's a little bit of work on the south side, eastbound lanes for a new noise barrier that will be constructed, and then just the impacts to the bridge replacement on the south side or eastbound. But the majority of the work is on the westbound lanes. As far as schedule, I know these are pretty broad. The contractor, the design build team is Archer Western and Heath and Linebeck. Heath and Linebeck's the engineer of record and designer, and Archer Western is the contractor composing the design build team. They received their NTP-1 in October of 22, so they've been working towards final design. They're getting close. I can give you updates to these rather broad quarterly schedules here. Right now, they're looking at starting after the 4th of July with utility relocations and clearing, and that would be project-wide clearing. The Mount Vernon Bridge work would be next on schedule. That should start around August, and that would start in the median work on 285, and then continue with the bridge replacement. Following the Mount Vernon Bridge work beginning, they would start work on the Long Island widening through September and October. And then the auxiliary lane work will follow the majority of the work and should be completed through Q4, or started through Q4 of this year. As far as the noise barriers, there are noise barriers associated with this project that are in place that will require relocation. The relocations are going to be performed as quickly as possible. We understand that that's an impact that we want to try to avoid. So currently, there is a section between Roswell Road and Long Island that the contractor believes they'll be able to prepare for the relocation in advance of the relocation. So in other words, they'd be able to get the new posts up and then just transfer the panels, so there wouldn't be a long extended period of the noise wall being removed. The idea there being to get it done as quickly as possible. There will be a period there where there won't be a noise barrier in place, but they're trying to reduce that as much as possible. That's also the case down at Riverside Drive. They should be able to work and get most of the work done to prepare for the relocation in advance of actually moving the panels. The section between Long Island and Mount Vernon, there is an area of that noise wall that requires a retaining wall, and it's a substantial retaining wall. The equipment to construct that wall will need to sit where the current noise barrier is in place. So that section between Roswell and Mount Vernon, closer to Mount Vernon, would be actually removed and stored in place until the posts were in place and it could be relocated. The intent is still to be as aggressive as they can with getting that replaced, but it's likely to be probably a 3 to 6 month period to get that retaining wall built and the noise barrier relocated. And then there's a new noise barrier that will be installed eastbound from Riverside to Mount Vernon. As Marty mentioned, this is part of the Sandy Springs aesthetic package for this bridge. It's similar to two of the other bridges that are under construction now at Pitts and Roberts for the 400 Phase 1 project. So the aesthetics, the stonework finish, the decorative fencing, lighting, etc., all meet the aesthetics package that Sandy Springs has developed, and that is included in the contract. And we are working with this contractor, this design-build team, as well as the other projects design-build team for consistency with those aesthetics. So we are coordinating that. And some contact information here for myself. Kyle Collins, our communications office, is here with me tonight, and Molly, one of our PMC communications members. We do have the project email is set up, and that has been published, and we also have the project website available. Questions?
All right. Mr. Retaining Wall.
Yeah.
Thank you. Real quick, the noise barriers you're putting up, are they just for this lane, or are you locating these so that they'll take care of the CD lanes that are going to come later?
The intent is that they would be in place for the future project as well.
Okay, thank you.
So one relocation.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the plan for the staging of the Mount Vernon Bridge? I mean, that's clearly, we have really 3 east-west corridors: Mount Vernon, Herds Ferry, and then Abernathy, with Hammond sometimes coming into that, but it gets into Mount Vernon. And it's like today, I mean, anytime there's a problem on 285, and we know that, you're doing everything you can to minimize those, but those roads become the primary relief valve. And this morning, it was backed up forever and ever. Are you going to, your timing on this, is it going to coincide with the end of construction on 285, or is that still be going on while we're disrupting one of our relief valves?
It's likely to start in the median, but this is a parallel bridge. Michael Gant is here with the contractor. He may be able to speak a little bit better about the actual staging. Michael? But yeah, the intent is that this would be a parallel bridge, so the only real impact to Mount Vernon would be the tie-in points.
Yeah, again, thank you for your opportunity. And my name is Michael Gant. I'm with Archer Western Contractors. Been doing work in the state for many, many years. But to your question there, we have designed the bridge, or in the process of designing the bridge, to be constructed fully offline. And then the only impacts would be at the two tie-ins. There is some utility work early on that will interrupt some service on the lanes itself, which will be done during flagging operations. And again, we understand the impacts, and we'll work with it either within the contract, and biggest thing is to schedule those off-peak hours.
Are you going to do like a precast and haul it in? What kind of?
No, as far as the bridge construction, it's standard bridge construction, but we are 100% offline next to Mount Vernon, current bridge. So we'll be to the east side. We'll be able to construct. That's actually part of our proposal, was to be able to construct that full width without interrupting the existing bridge.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
right. Other than when you shift the traffic, you'll have
absolutely,
to.
which will happen. And basically,
good.
our goal is there as a single night or a single day operation.
That's greatly appreciated. Yeah. Thank you, because it was a real concern if we had to try and maintain traffic through there, and that I think will help a lot. So thank you for being willing to do that. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you, Rick.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity again.
And we appreciate it. We really appreciate, as challenging as it becomes, we do appreciate the fact that GDOT has been cooperative and communicative.
Well, and I am the project manager on the 400 Phase 1 as well. So we have established regular meetings, monthlies, for both projects with the city. So we're going to keep you all updated. So thank you.
You've done a good job. Even when we were unhappy with what was going on, you did tell us.
we appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you. All right. Moving to the next item. I guess this is Ms. Carlisle. You'll talk to us about the budget amendment that we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Mayor, while Tony is coming up to the podium, I wanted to point out a couple of things in the packet for you all. We've tried to organize this to make it a little bit easier to follow than last time's document. So beginning on page 16 in the agenda materials is the technical document that has to be filed with our actual financials so that our auditors remain happy with us. And that corresponds item by item to the slides that begin on page 20. And that's where Tony's going to pick up now.
Okay.
Good evening. At the last council meeting, it was our intent to present a comprehensive budget amendment for approval to close completed projects and approve remaining or unused funds to other projects, including capital contingency. As the city manager just stated, since the item was tabled in the last meeting, we have organized the presentation materials to provide clarity on the reallocation of the budgeted funds. The total of the presentation was approximately $24.7 million. This amount did not represent available funds for FY24's budget, nor did it represent total excess funds. The document it presented was the journal entry to support the budget amendment, and the $24.7 million represented the debit column of the journal entry. As you may know, fund accounting requires transfers in and transfers out to properly record transactions which cross funds. This part of the entry duplicates or doubles the original entry amount, which also may give the false impression that $24.7 million was available to use on other projects. Tonight's presentation will hopefully bring clarity to the budget amendment and identify the funds available for current and future use. As new information becomes available throughout the year, account reconciliations are completed, leading to budget amendments, which are presented to amend or increase or decrease the budget. through the formal process. Budgets are plans, which change with shifts or adjustments in designs, plans, and goals, and therefore, we bring this budget amendment before you for consideration, as it must be completed prior to the end of this fiscal year to impact FY23's activities and provide funds for council's appropriation in the FY24 budget process. In the previous amendment, we listed several projects which were completed or not started for approval of reallocation of funds. Since the last meeting, these projects have been identified as transactions within the city manager's authority. Excuse me, for completing the budget amendment, as each project is less than $150,000 each. The spending limit approved for the city manager at the October 5th, 2021 council meeting was $150,000. The cumulative total of these projects is $338,868.31. These funds are available funds and will be included in the final slide of the budget amendment presentation. Next slide. Item number 1, reallocation to Fire Station number 5. This budget amendment is requesting deobligation of the compensation study implementation project funds in the amount of $800,000 and approved FY22 capital improvement project. This project has been funded by the general fund in FY22 and is not a capital project. Deobligating $800,000 allows the funds to be reallocated to Fire Station number 5 for the shortfall of $1 million requested in FY24 under the pay-go process. The additional funding needed to satisfy the $1 million gap is to allocate $200,000 from capital contingency. The $200,000 from capital contingency plus the $800,000 from the FY22 CIP project is the $1 million needed to fund Fire Station number 5's project. We will review the capital contingency balance at the end of this presentation. Next slide.
Comp study. What was the comp study implementation that is being now zeroed out?
It was the pay and comp study budgeted in the FY22 that we put into practice last year. The increases to bring all the staff up to the proper pay ranges.
Oh, okay.
That's
compensation study.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that money is now freed up.
Yes.
And is, just to be clear, is going into settle out this project here.
Right. We're going to use the $800,000 from A2201 and allocate it to the Fire Station number 5.
Right. Okay.
But you're saying we were paying $800,000 for a study?
It was to implement the recommendations of the pay and compensation study, and it had been incorrectly listed as a capital project in the FY22 budget. If you recall, you should not use capital funds for ongoing operational costs. So we funded that out of the operating budget last year, and we're cleaning this up this year.
It wasn't a study. It was the
It was
results of the study.
It was the implementation, as it references.
Okay. All right. And one way or the other, we got to pay for this.
Fire Station.
Right. So this is just taking from one bucket and putting into in the other. Okay. Because if we didn't do it from here, you were going to have to find it from somewhere else. Okay. Softball question.
Any other questions?
Proceed.
Okay. Item number 2, fire defibrillator leasing. We're requesting a budget amendment to change the purchase of defibrillators from CIP to an operating expense for the fire department. Leasing is an operating expense, not a capital expense, and therefore should be managed in the general fund. The defibrillators were approved in the FY23 CIP budget for $150,000. The fire department later determined a lease for the defibrillators is ideal given the constant changes in technology. The defibrillators will be leased for $90,000, approximately $90,000 per year through Phillips Medical Capital, LLC, over 5 years with a lease purchase option available at the end of the lease. This request allocates $100,000 to operations to fund the first year of the lease, and the project balance of $50,000 will increase the capital contingency balance. Again, we will review the capital contingency balance at the end of this presentation. Next slide. Police ammunition purchases. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the inventory replenishment of ammunition has been challenging given the delay in delivery crossing fiscal years. Each year, the ammo has been ordered but received in a subsequent fiscal year, negatively impacting the operational budget of the police department. As an operational expense, the prior year's purchases utilized the current year's budget, leaving little to zero funds available for the operations of small tools for the police department. This amendment requests the current year's budget for ammunition be transferred from operating expenses to CIP and add $142,050 from capital contingency to cover the unbudgeted carry forward from prior fiscal years. We will review the capital contingency calculation at the end of this presentation. Item number 4, utility undergrounding, Johnson Ferry pedestrian lighting, and city center land purchases and utility work. This request is to reallocate unused utility and lighting project budgets. T2307 is expected to only spend $900,000 for the Johnson Ferry pedestrian lighting. Adjusting the budget to reflect this reality allows $700,000 for reallocation. T8000 underground utility capital program is completed, leaving $423,316.35 available for reallocation. Total funds available from these projects for reallocation is $1,123,316.35. Of this amount, we recommend adding funding in the amount of $115,000 to CC1, land acquisition, to cover costs of new land acquisitions. Allocate $540,000 to CC6, utility relocation, to fully fund Triangle Distribution relocation phase. The balance of these funds would be allocated to capital contingency in the amount of $468,316.35. Next slide. Item number 5, temporary fire station number 1 and Trowbridge project. F2305 temporary fire station number 1 is expected to cost less than $180,000 to complete the relocation of the modular building. We are requesting reallocation of the remaining funds, or $322,091.04, to the following projects. F5 Trowbridge facility, a current project in the amount of $250,000. An increase in capital contingency with the balance of these funds, or $72,091.04. A summary of the capital contingency will follow at the end. As a side note, we've also requested $150,000 in FY24 CIP for this project.
Mayor, may I ask a question, please? As I read this, the temporary modular building that we had across the street here, where we're building this fire station, is going to be relocated to the new police headquarters site, but it's not going to be a temporary fire station. It's going to be for contractor use? Because one of the things we've been talking about is when they close the Pitts Road Bridge over 400, which is coming, there was a question about how the fire department could get across to the west side of 400 and the west side of Roswell Road. And I thought at one point we were going to put a temporary fire station either on the police headquarters site, or at one point we were even talking about putting it further up next to the car wash. So tell me, does anybody know what the plans are for that fire station when the Pitts Road Bridge is closed? Because it looks like we're not going to use it.
It appears the chief's on an emergency run.
Because he has the answer.
A slow trot. Yes, Councilman, good evening. So when we ran the data to relocate that, it was over 3 years ago. And at that time, we had our fire risk was showing that we needed to place that station there. Since that time, and through the department initiatives of fire prevention that we have done, we've seen a tremendous reduction in the location of those fires. The major problem we have in that area is EMS. So what we're doing is, once that we get the date that the bridge will close down, we will redirect our posting plan with AMR and the ambulance service to make sure that we have somebody in that area. Okay. The fire risk and the fire activity is actually north of Northridge now. And so in the apartment complex, that's where our heat mount shows, and we can access that still through Northridge. So that was the rationale.
A temporary fire station up there.
We don't need it up there, no, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks.
Next slide. Item number 6, Heritage Georgia Commission on the Holocaust. This budget amendment is requesting to move the design and construction of the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust to the PFA, the Public Facilities Authority, which houses major city developments such as the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust. This requires a transfer of $2.4 million to the new PFA project, PF8, from the CIP project, F8. The balance of $2,547.51 will remain in the capital improvement program for any ancillary costs which are not expected but may occur. Item number 7, Old Riverside Drive Park. This budget amendment is requesting consolidation of impact fees in T35 into P19 and to utilize all available impact fees through Project P19. Impact fees are charged to support transportation improvements, recreation in parks, and public safety. The fees were charged at the time of issuance of the building permit. Impact fees must be used, spent, or encumbered by the 5th fiscal year after collection. Funds from 2018 must be obligated in 2023 to protect. $1.1 million of the $3.8 million are funds from 2018, which meets our 5-year requirement.
So, can I ask a question, Tony? What will happen with the T0035, the Chattahoochee River project, when it's ready to go? Will that come back for council then for funding, since we're moving money from that?
All of these are going to be rolled into P19, so they'll be processed from P19, any payments, any activity.
But yes, Councilwoman Mueller, once we have more concrete information from the city of Roswell on the path forward with the Chattahoochee River Ped Bridge, we would be bringing that back for you for additional discussions.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, but to follow up, just so we're clear, this is actually an example of a bucket, and we're effectively, for now, defunding T35, right? I mean, that money's been sitting in that bucket allocated, but that project has taken a lot longer.
That is
Right.
correct.
So this is an example of one that we truly are, this is not just an administrative shuffle, but this has been sitting there too long, not being used. We don't see this project in the immediate future. I mean,
And it's still an ongoing conversation
right.
with the city of Roswell.
So rather than have that money sit idly in that T35 bucket, we're jumping it in, so we have a really, that much more funding available for a project that looks like we're going to do in advance.
And they are parks impact fees, so that's another reason why.
Oh, so
they need
were
to
those
be-
parks impact fees in T35?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That makes even more sense.
Next slide. Item number 8, Trail Segment 2A Grant and Trail Design and Unassigned Funding. This request includes $3 million in grants subsequently obtained, which brings the balance of P2201 to $12 million for Segment 2A. We are requesting reallocating $3 million of city funds to the unassigned project P28 for use in design phase funding of trails or future reallocation to other segments. Item number 9, tree fund projects. This request asks to utilize previously collected tree funds to fund the invasive Trees Atlanta and Surveys tree fund projects in the amounts shown for the spending which has exceeded the current budget. This budget request uses tree fund balance to fund these projects. Item number 10, General Fund Subsidy of Performing Arts Center Fund. The Performing Arts Center is doing well financially with the current fund balance of $2.8 million. This request is to eliminate the FY23 General Fund subsidy budget to PAC from the General Fund, which was budgeted in the amount of $1,739,000. The general fund has not funded the subsidy installment since March 2022. PAC receives monthly fees from hotel motel fees in an amount equivalent to 39.30% of all fees collected.
All right, can you go back?
Yeah.
So you talked about the current fund balance of 2.8 million through the current year. Is that 2.8 million set aside for a reserve for the PAC, and you're pulling 1.739 out of the 2.8 and leaving the balance in there?
We've not transferred the 1.739.
But if you do, there'll still be some in this fund, the PAC fund, you're gonna leave, so you're still leaving some money in there.
It would increase the fund balance if we transfer
It'll
it.
increase the fund balance.
Yes.
That's not dedicated, that's not encumbered to PAC support?
We budgeted for it, but we saw that the fund balance was growing. So instead of sending excess funds there, we're going to utilize the current fund balance of the Performing Arts Center.
Right. I just don't know why the 1.739 and the 2.8 are different numbers.
Okay, so the 1.739 is based on the FY23 budget.
Oh, I see, okay.
We identified the hotel motel fees, and that's 39.30% of the budgeted hotel motel fees for FY23.
Okay, thank you.
As mentioned earlier in the presentation, previously we listed several projects which were completed or not started for approval of reallocation of funds. These two slides summarize the projects which are within the city manager's authority for completing the budget amendment, as each project is less than $150,000 each. For full transparency, we didn't omit these items, but wanted to explain the action to be taken for use of the remaining funds, totaling $338,868.31. Additionally, there are two items which have been omitted from the previous presentation: Path 400, reallocation of $3 million, and Nancy Creek reallocation of $97,000. After further review and analysis of anticipated construction costs, staff does not recommend deobligating the funds from Path 400. We will bring an update back to council at a future work session. A grant funding analysis will be completed for Nancy Creek to determine if funds remain available. The capital contingency summary is the final slide to summarize the activities previously presented. This calculation presents the beginning balance of the capital contingency, $2,347,719.61, and considers the movement of funds requested within this presentation, including the $338,868.31 of projects to be approved by the city manager, bringing the ending balance of capital contingency to $2,934,945.31, adding $587,225.70 to the contingency balance. This concludes the budget amendment presentation.
All right. Any questions? Dr. Kelly,
Just wanted to,
can you pull your microphone a little bit closer?
yeah,
Thank you.
I want to make sure I understand the contingency balance as of now. Okay. So if I go back to the our fiscal year 23, that budget, what I didn't understand is for the capital contingency line, and I'm actually
Are you looking at the slide that's on the screen?
Yeah, it's not there. I'm actually looking at, oh, there it is. Okay. I was actually looking at the line item on the approved fiscal year 23 budget. And the number is $4,473,000. And it looks like it's carrying over from previous funding, right? Is that what, okay.
It does.
So, oh, okay. So is that sort of, so we didn't plan to dedicate anything during this fiscal year to it?
The capital contingency?
Yeah.
So because it's a capital fund, the balance does roll over year after year.
Right. Okay. All right. And so then this number that is on your slide represents where it stands now. And so it's
Right,
about-
as of 5/10, that was the balance of the capital contingency account as of last Thursday.
Okay, great. And then that difference is just things that have come out.
The 500,000?
The difference between the 4.4 million and this number here.
Yes.
It's just,
Funds that we've utilized, and we probably have added funds to the capital contingency fund throughout the year.
got it. So in the unaudited financials for today, which are from March, it's not really showing, for this account, it's not really showing any, like, actuals for, like, the expenditures, or the March actuals or the 2023 year-to-date. All those columns are empty.
I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and I don't know, it just doesn't look like anything's being spent out of there, or,
We'll take a look at it and come back with an analysis of what, if any, activity has occurred prior to this budget amendment request for this fiscal year.
okay, I was just curious about it. Thank you.
Any others? Mr. Baumann?
Thank you. This is a much more helpful and for, budgeting for dummies kind of presentation. So thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
I mean, light years. Can we go back to I just have two items I want to ask about. Item 4. So the 540, is there anything in here that has changed with respect to actual costs and budget that's not being disclosed? I don't mean it in a negative way, but is this, again, just a shuffling of money, or is there some new costs that we have not been made aware of that we now need to draw money for this? Utility relocation, is there, or is this just sort of already assumed costs that we were going to have, we just need to fill the buckets?
It's that, and for example, on the Johnson Ferry pedestrian lighting, you'll remember that was a ballot item last year, and at the time, we had estimated the expense to be $1.6 million. It actually came back.
Oh, I understand the money we're grabbing,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm happy to grab money. But in terms of the expenditure of the 115 and the 540,
So
the
115
468 is going to contingency, so we're grabbing that for future use. But the 115 and 540, is there anything new in that?
No, the 115 is the remediation that's necessary on the last parcel that the city acquired on the block south of City Springs.
Is that new information, or has that been?
No.
Okay, and what about the 540?
The 540 is the final closeout of the utility relocation, the undergrounding work with Georgia Power.
Okay, but nothing's come up new that
No,
we need
sir.
to. All right, let's go to item 9. Kristen, for you, is there, I guess, obviously, I think Tree Fund, Trees Atlanta, it's buying trees, right? That's an easy one. Invasives, I think that's probably for tree canopy preservation. That's an easy one. So does surveys fit within Tree Fund policy? I don't recall.
Yes, so the way that we do this is that we go out and we survey all of our trees on public property.
Oh, yeah, but
and then
but
we
does
use
our
that.
policy, does our ordinance on tree funds?
Yes, it's not very specific right now, and that's actually something that Willie, who is now funded out of the Tree
Yeah.
Fund, is working on, creating and adding in some new projects for your consideration.
Yeah, I just want to be really
allow-
guarded about the slippery slope of, the community has spoken pretty loudly, and this body, at least previously from a policy standpoint, has spoken pretty loudly, pretty clearly, that tree funds are to be used for, and I remain concerned about using it for personnel, but, to the extent it can be used for, I think the intent is for, new canopy, preservation of canopy, but we really need to guard against that slippery slope of expenditure. And if a policy, I would rather comply with a policy than sort of stretch the policy. So if we need to revisit the policy and its language, let's do that rather than just sort of contort into interpretations that meet, the need of the day.
So we did bring all of those items to a work session to get council consensus before we added any of
Yeah.
these projects in. The language of the ordinance itself is really vague. I don't think we're stretching anything at all. But we want to make that more specific and add in these particular things. And the nature of the surveys is that we then have a maintenance program associated with our trees to protect and maintain our tree canopy. And we felt like that was a real missing gap that we weren't addressing at the time.
Okay, I don't have to be really careful about something, using consensus on a work session consensus on an ordinance. So what I'd like to request is that you kind of come back to us at some point in the future, summarize bring us the language, send us the language of the tree fund ordinance on what we can and can't do, the language. Tell us what we are doing with tree funds that may be beyond planting and direct preservation, which tells us what we're using the tree funds for. Just give us a complete summary, and then let us assess. I do recall some conversation maybe in the retreat and maybe in a work session, but I don't know that I'm alone up here in saying that I want to be real cautious on how we tap that bank.
Understood.
Any others? All right, Ms. Carlisle, thank you for that very detailed explanation. That closes out our work session. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, the 16th of May. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I want to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meetings. Public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson.
Here.
Councilmember Melody Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle.
Here.
Councilmember Tibi DeJulio.
Here.
Councilmember Andy Baumann.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, have we received any public comment cards?
We have not received any public comment cards.
All right. Before I recognize Mr. DiGiulio for a motion to approve the meeting agenda, I need to make one request. You recall we've just seen a presentation on the budget amendments. Council tabled that at the last meeting, so Mr. DiGiulio, if you are so inclined, when you make the motion to approve the meeting agenda, would you also make the motion to remove that item from the table and place it in the old business? It's in the back here somewhere. Just say we're bringing off the budget amendments off the table. Mr. DiGiulio.
The meeting agenda for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023, with the addition of removing the budget amendment from the table.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve the meeting agenda and remove the budget amendments from the table for action under old business. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the meeting agenda as amended. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, May 16th.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to new business, the clerk will please read the first item.
Agenda item 2023-143, consideration to award a parks landscape maintenance contract to Rupert Landscape LLC as it relates to requests for qualifications number 23-065. This is presented by Director of Recreation and Parks, Michael Perry.
Mr. Perry.
Hey, good evening, Council. Our landscape provider for the last 2 years or so, back in March, submitted their termination and asked for relief of their contract. It was accepted and was really pretty much a mutual understanding.
their service level wasn't up to our expectations. So rather than going through a long process, we agreed that it was time to separate. At that time, the city submitted or procured a request for qualifications from vendors. At that time, we had 6 proposals. All of them met our standards. We basically had a selection committee of staff, and we put together our criteria to qualify these firms based on equipment that they possessed, manpower, like references, like jobs, et cetera, so that we weren't in a position of wedging something into a place that really wasn't their niche. With that said, 5 of these folks submitted quotes on April 26th, all of whom are very qualified. You see the list in front of you. They're all well-known names, all more than capable of doing our work. We asked for a low bid quote for quotes. The low quote was submitted by Rupert Landscape at a quote of $368,796. Staff met again with the low bidder, make sure they understood the scope, make sure they understood our expectations, and it would be our recommendation to award the contract to the low bidder. Now, I'll answer any questions you might
All right,
have.
you've heard the report of the Director of Parks and Recreation. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-143, an award of a Parks Landscape Maintenance Contract to Rupert Landscape LLC as it relates to request for qualifications number 23-065.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second? Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-143, award of Parks Landscape Maintenance Contract to Rupert Landscape as relates to the request for qualification 23-065. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
Michael, why do you think Rupert is so much less? Is it just because they're familiar with the work they're already doing?
It's a considerable amount of money. It's over about $150,000. The others were all kind of lumped in there together. That caused us some concern. And had this been the past we've done low bid. This is the first time we actually did an RFQ to make sure we had qualified vendors.
Mm-hmm.
The previous vendor was very low, but again, that wasn't a low bid by itself. It was a low bid contract. This was not. They were all first qualified. We asked them that, and they said they are very comfortable in their quote.
Okay.
Well, they do a lot of work already here
They
at
do.
the city, so
They do.
it may be some, well, they do out front here.
And they do the whole complex here.
Yeah.
Fire station, Bluestone, et cetera.
So it may be they got some cost savings as a result of mass. I don't know, but it was eye catching.
It is, and it caught us. We gave that a lot of thought as well. We have a landscape manager on our staff. We go out and check their work, and we will do the same to Rupert. And we expect to be treated fairly, and we will treat them fairly.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-143, a award of Parks Landscape Maintenance Contract to Rupert Landscaping. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-144, consideration to accept the Building Opportunities in out-of-school time grant from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, Georgia Recreation and Parks Association. This is also presented by Director of Recreation and Parks, Michael Perry.
Mr. Perry.
Yes, this is a GRPA, Georgia Recreation and Park Association. That's our state professional association. Most of us are members of that association. There's an application process through GRPA. This is a new grant. I think this is the second year of the grant. We submitted with your approval, we will submit a grant for this amount, $2,850. There are no matches required.
These dollars will be used to fund attendance from our kids at, the first one is a Sequest. Sequest is an aquarium. I think that's near Stonecrest, Jane, is that right? Stonecrest Mall? Jane? Stonecrest, is that right? It's Stonecrest. And the others are actual, come here, stand with me, Jane. Some of you may or may not know Jane Jarrett. Jarrett is our program coordinator. We try to send you some of the real cool photographs and numbers and things that Jane's put on with a lot of her events. So this is a product that Jane's worked on. Sequest is something for our summer camp. It's an aquarium that we'll take our kids to, about 30 kids per
So good
thing.
afternoon, Mayor and City Council. We're going to have 5 weeks of summer camp. We're going to have 30 kids coming. So this grant opportunity is just building opportunities for the kids to expand on their learning. It's taking those science concepts that they had from school and getting to have them in those out-of-school time opportunities like summer camp. So we're going to Sequest, which has animals from the aquarium, from sloths, all these animals that they're going to get to interact with that they're learning about in their science classes. They're going to go to Bricks for Kids, which is a Lego brand, and so they're going to learn about outer space, those hands-on concepts, the Chattahoochee Nature Center as well, and then Little Medical School. So a lot of different concepts. It is a reimbursable grant, so we're asking permission to be awarded.
All right. You've heard the report of the Department of Recreation and Parks. What's the desire of council? I'm not sure if we can handle this much money, but give us our best shot. Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-144, accept the building opportunities and out-of-school time grant from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, Georgia Recreation and Parks Association.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second? Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-144, accepting the building opportunities in out-of-school time grant from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
Jane, you do such an awesome job, so thank you for all you do. My question, the 30 campers, are those the only campers in this program, and how do they get picked? And
So it'll be 30 campers, but they can be different campers each week.
Okay.
So some kids can come all 5 weeks, or it might be a different cohort of campers depending on the
This
week.
is one of the camps. We have more than 30 a week.
So we do have other camps that are operating, but this grant is applicable to just this camp.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Baumann.
Makes our job worth it. Are we leaving kids out? Are there more kids? Are we filled, or could we include more kids in this?
So we do have other camps that are operating at the same time.
Well, I guess my question is, are there kids that maybe want to participate, but for reasons of economics or otherwise can't? Can this council do anything to help you to do even more?
So we do have scholarship opportunities. Our camp is one of the most affordable camps out there. We're actually cheaper than YMCA, and then we do have scholarships available. So we are doing a lot to get these kids to come to camp.
All right, will you promise that if you need more through outreach, that you will come back and either tell the council or tell us personally, and we will do whatever we can to. Well, I'll do whatever I can to, and we will do what we can to make sure that no kid who knows about it and wants to do it, and but for whatever reason can't, that we can include them.
That'd be great. Definitely with this grant, it helps break down that barrier to participation, so we can keep the costs low and not charge more for it.
Any other? Dr. Kelly.
Thank you. You mentioned scholarships. I'm just curious. I know it's mid-May. Just curious as to approximately how many scholarship applications we've seen for summer programming. So I'll have to get back to you on that number. Okay. But you are seeing some. I can tell you that about 73% of our campers are on free or reduced lunch. So if we have that application come in, that's one of the things that we look for. Okay. Great, thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-144, accepting the building opportunities in out-of-school time grant from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-145, consideration to approve a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power Company to install pedestrian lighting for the Mount Vernon Highway Johnson Ferry Road Improvement Project. This is project number TS-191, presented by Public Works Director William Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, good evening. This agenda item and the next one are recommendations from staff to enter into a lighting services agreement with the Georgia Power Company in the interest of providing lighting for our TS-191 project. This first agreement in front of you tonight installs the vast majority of the pedestrian scale lighting required in execution of the project TS-191 on both Roswell Road, Mount Vernon Highway, and Johnson Ferry Road with the project. The list of actions associated with this installation are attached within the agenda memo. Should the city not, as an alternative, should the city decide not to pursue this agreement with Georgia Power Company, we could alternatively pursue self-installation via the construction contract. Historically, our costs have been better, all things considered, with Georgia Power through their lease agreements. The agreement would require the city to pay an initial amount installation cost of some $837,957 to install the lighting, and then subsequent to that installation, a monthly lease cost of some $2,778.08 to account for lighting and maintenance cost in the future. There are sufficient funds within project account CC6 TS-191 to fund this installation cost.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor.
Ms. Rochelle. You got to the base a split second ahead.
I'd like to approve agenda item 2023-145, the lighting services agreement with Georgia Power Company to install pedestrian lighting for the Mount Vernon Highway Johnson Ferry Improvement Project.
A motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-145, a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power to install pedestrian lighting along Mount Vernon Highway and Johnson Ferry Road. Any discussion? Ms. Rochelle and then Ms. Mueller.
So this morning when I was running, I noticed that there were a lot of pedestrian, well, not a lot, but there were some. Are we adding to it?
This is the roadway alignments changed significantly with the project. So we're having Georgia Power come in this case, relocate lights, and effectively install new lights is what they're doing as they remove existing lights and address the new roadway alignments throughout the project area.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mueller.
Marty, I know I've asked this before when we've done other installations. Do we do anything with shielding, so lights for residents, right? If some of the lights might be bright, I mean, how do we go about determining which lights need shields?
And so, and I think I'm pretty comfortable on that. So the lights themselves have they're recessed somewhat, the LED lights for pedestrian scale street lighting, so there's one, not that immediate glare. And then we do have the ability to tune those lights with shielding as needed, should they become intrusive to the bedroom window next door, et cetera.
So residents would have to they would call in, and then we would do an evaluation?
If we haven't accurately anticipated
Okay.
With Georgia Power's lighting installation, then yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Residents.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-145, approving a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power for pedestrian lighting on the Johnson Ferry Highway, Mount Vernon Highway, Johnson Ferry Road Improvement Project. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-146, consideration to approve a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power Company to install intersection mast arm lighting for the Mount Vernon Highway, Johnson Ferry Road Improvement Project. This is project number TS-191, also presented by Public Works Director William Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, This companion agreement to the previous lighting agreement for the project installs street lighting on our city-installed mast arms as a part of this project. So where the other agreement was about Georgia Power installing uniquely Georgia Power facilities in the right-of-way, this is about Georgia Power installing Georgia Power lighting on our mast arms that will be developed and constructed with the project, therefore slightly different basis. In this case, this agreement for street lighting associated with the project attached to our mast arms as a part of the project, the cost would be some $38,903 with a monthly lease cost of $404.80 for this lighting.
All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-146, approve a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power to install intersection mast arm lighting for the Mount Vernon Highway Johnson Ferry Road Improvement Project, TS 191.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-146, a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power installing intersection mast arm lighting for the Mount Vernon Johnson Ferry Road project. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-146, approving a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power for the Mount Vernon Highway Johnson Ferry Road project. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-147, consideration of the Georgia Department of Transportation Local Maintenance and Improvement Safety Action Plan Grant application for fiscal year 2023, presented by Public Works Director William Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, in this case, a kind of quick breaking opportunity that GDOT's informed us of. In this case, Safety Action Plan Local Maintenance Improvement Grant. We last had this opportunity about 2 years ago, where we were able to take advantage of some projects within that grant agreement. But in this case, in April 25th of this year, GDOT informed us that they had funding available in 23 for low-cost safety improvements on our roadways in the interest of reducing the frequency and severity of crashes. Based on a GDOT model of our streets and types of crashes and that crash severity or reported crash severity, GDOT determined we were eligible for some total grant amount of some $400,000 with a required 30% match therein, as is a consistency with LMIG program. And the following streets were identified: Riverside Drive, Peachtree Dunwoody Road, Johnson Ferry, among others, with a severity score applied to them. Our staff, in turn, took those eligible roadways and weighed those against projects we had already identified in our programs for those roadways, or could be quickly made to be eligible for those roadways. Among those projects eligible on those roadways were guardrail replacements and repairs, improvements, and traffic signal maintenance repairs and improvements there as well, to include flashing yellow arrows, et cetera, associated with the projects. So with that said, staff has developed a list of projects with a total value estimated at $380,000, $730. Within that, we would apply for a LMIG grant of some $292,869, with the expectation that the city provide a local match of $87,861 against that list of projects. That being the entirety of the projects we were able to screen and identify against those eligible roadways. Good news here is those projects were already in the works and within funded program. So if anything, this acceptance of all of these, any or all of these projects, help buy down the city's cost in the furtherance of these efforts we already have programmed here.
All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Dr. Kelly.
Let's see. I move approval of agenda item 2023-147, Georgia Department of Transportation Local Maintenance and Improvement Safety Action Plan Grant application for fiscal year 2023.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2023-147, that we apply for a Georgia Department of Transportation Local Maintenance and Improvement Safety Action Grant, a plan grant for FY23. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson?
Thank you. So Marty, when are we going to know if this money is available? And when we do, would you bring these projects back and let's talk about the details of what you're
We
planning
can
on doing on
update
these?
you. Last time we did this, about 2 years ago, it was somewhere in the 60 to 90 days.
So summer.
That I recollect it, before we've got final approval on which projects would be supported.
Okay, and when you do come back, and
Yes,
the reason I'm asking is the one at Northridge Road, there's some improvements. I'm just interested in the specifics of what each of these projects
Absolutely.
entails.
We can update you at that time.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-147, applying for a GDOT LMIG Action Plan grant. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-148, consideration to adopt and acknowledge receipt of changes made to the City of Sandy Springs municipal districts and the mayor and city council salaries as authorized by Georgia Act 156, House Bill 601 of the 2023-2024 Georgia General Assembly legislative session. This is presented by City Attorney Dan Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Mayor and City Council, this is more or less a housekeeping measure. As you know, the state legislature and the governor in their authority have raised your salary, or the council members' salaries and the mayor's salary, and they've adopted the new realignment of the council districts. This act tonight is putting this in our code book so that it has public review and it can get to the Muni Code system.
Okay, you've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-148, adopt and acknowledge receipt of changes made to the City of Sandy Springs municipal districts and the mayor and city council salaries as authorized by Georgia Act 156, House Bill 601 of the 2023-24 Georgia General Assembly legislative session.
Motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DeGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2023-148, adopt and acknowledge the receipt of changes made to the City of Sandy Springs municipal districts and the mayor and city council salaries as authorized by Georgia Act 156 and House Bill 601. All right, Mr. Paulson, you have the right. I just was going to add a little context to this, please. So there's some, first of all, redistricting. Of course, there's going to be a case brought before the courts about redistricting in Cobb County, but be that as it may, the Attorney General and everybody else has weighed in saying the legislature redistricts. And so there were several hundred bills in the last two sessions to redistrict every city, school board, county commission in the state of Georgia. So the legislature made changes in our districts to bring each of the legislative districts within the acceptable population ranges based on the 2020 census. So this is something that happens every 10 years. The request of the General Assembly this year was that we would make as minimal changes as possible to the traditional districts that we've always had since the start of the city and adjust those boundaries simply to bring them in as close as possible to the population balance as guided by court decisions previously governing redistricting. In that process, this body has no authority to raise its own salary during the course of its term. The only people who can do that is the General Assembly. The council, nor I, asked for the raise, but the legislature looked at what other cities in North Fulton were being paid and determined that we were a little bit out of line with the normal salaries for city council. So they approached and just basically said, look, we want to bring Sandy Springs in line with kind of what others. Of course, they made some adjustments in other cities in North Fulton as well. That's within their purview. Nobody here asked. In fact, they didn't even know until the bill was already passed that this was done. So they didn't. I want to make clear that everybody, at least these six people, had no idea that these raises were in the process. I was involved from the point of view they at least consulted with me before they did it. I told them the mayor didn't need an increase, but I didn't want the council to be punished if other councils were being paid commensurate with what the legislature did. So I was involved in the discussions about it, but nobody else up here had any role in raising their salary. So I want to make that perfectly clear. But that's kind of where we are. The districts, I think, are good. What we tried to do is protect the traditional districts. You can't keep them, we had a fairly wide difference in the population of some of the districts. I know District 6 and District 2 had a significant, they needed to grow. They needed to absorb population. District 3 and District 4 needed to lose population. And some of us have gotten some emails today, once this was on the agenda, saying we want to keep our neighborhoods together. To the extent that it could be done, it was done. But there were at least one large subdivision that split between two districts, and there was no practical way that could be done. I mean, we looked at it, and as I've explained to a couple of people, it's actually, I think, a good thing for that one subdivision. They now have two voices on this council instead of one. So they've got twice as much clout now than they had before the redistricting. You could look at it that way, and I prefer to look at it that way. But the council districts are basically everything that was done to these districts was to bring them in compliance with court decisions and laws in the state of Georgia governing the redistricting process. So I just want to make sure that everybody understood that context and that these folks up here were not raising their salary. Yes, and those districts are they are in effect, but in the bill passed that makes these changes, it makes clear that everybody is continuing to represent their existing districts until the next election. So your districts don't change until the next city election.
Point of clarification, as I read that, I thought it said it changed everything effective July 1.
Well, I mean, my understanding was that you would stay in your districts, that you wouldn't be kicked out of your districts, in other words. So, yeah.
No, all I'm saying is...
Yeah, okay. Well,
the question is, are there people who used to be in District 2 that as of July 1 are now in District 1?
That's correct.
So the new council districts will be in effect, the boundaries will be in effect as of July 1.
Yeah, well, I guess what I didn't make myself clear, nobody is going to be booted out of their district as a result of this decision process. Okay. In other words, everybody still represents their district. You're still District 6. You're still District 1. All of these, so that none of that changes. I didn't make myself clear.
Right, and I get that. That's fantastic. Yeah. But the boundaries are as effective as of July.
As soon as the governor signed the bill, those districts were effective.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm sorry.
The good news is we all look out after each other.
Yeah, no. This has been a council that has always taken the attitude of what's best for the entire city, not necessarily what's in the best interest of their individual districts. And I can say that without any, clearly they represent their districts and they fight for their districts, but the overwhelming attitude of every member of council has always been what's in the best interest of the total city. So, anyway, anything else?
Thank you. I have a question.
Dr. Kelly.
Dan, I have a question for you just about this sort of item on the agenda. Would we have to approve or adopt anything like this anytime a charter change is made? Like, does it have anything to do with the fact that the charter's changing?
If an act of the legislature affects the law, if you will, in Sandy Springs, yes, in order to get it in our code and through our Muni code process, you have to resolve to move it in there.
Okay. Because there are some other changes to the charter that were recommended years ago that...
Yeah, well, the legislature chose not to do that when they were doing this charter change. So the same thing happened 10 years ago. There were a lot of things that the Charter Review Commission recommended be done, and the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, chose to do it their way.
I misunderstood the question. Only acts of the legislature that are signed by the governor would follow this process.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-148, a motion to adopt and acknowledge receipt of changes made to the City of Sandy Springs municipal districts and the mayor and city council salaries as authorized by the Georgia General Assembly. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-131, consideration to authorize amendments to the City of Sandy Springs fiscal year 2023 budget to reallocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers. This is presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle, welcome back. You want to go through that whole thing again?
Of course. Mayor and City Council, we are requesting authorization to the amendment of the City of Sandy Springs FY23 budget to reallocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers. Staff recommends an approval of the comprehensive budget amendment presented during work session to reallocate funds previously budgeted under certain projects which have been closed and or reduced. Several projects previously funded via the CIP fund have been completed or closed, with remaining funds available for reallocation. There are other projects in need of additional funding, while other projects under the CIP and general fund would benefit from accounting in a different fund, such as the Public Facilities Authority. The financial impact is that there are adequate funds available within CIP for the reallocation of the fund to other projects while increasing the capital contingency. The alternative is not to approve and provide guidance to staff.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio.
Move approval of item 2023-131, the authorization to amend the City of Sandy Springs fiscal year 2023 budget to allocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Do I hear a second? Second. Moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-131, the authorization of amendments to the City of Sandy Springs FY23 budget, reallocating capital project budgets and adjusting interfund transfers. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-131, authorizing amendments to the City of Sandy Springs FY23 budget. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. The budget is amended. Moving to reports, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege. My high school was founded in like the early 1900s, and it's a tiny little school. There were 27 people in my graduating class, so it was fairly easy for me to graduate in the top 10%. But we've never won anything, you know, athletically or otherwise. But today, or last night, my high school played in the State 1A championship in the state of Alabama. And they won their first game out of 3, 18-5. In the middle, there was a 4.5-hour rain delay. Well, today they had to start playing at 10 a.m., and they were down 10-3 going into their last at-bat. And they scored 8 runs in their last at-bat and won the state championship. So I'm very proud of my high school today. And there's a segue in there. There's a point to this. Mr. Paulson and I attended Saturday the SSYS, the youth sports closing ceremonies, and got to give out a lot of trophies. And it was a great experience, a lot of fun to see all the kids be rewarded for their excellence on the field. So it was. I always enjoyed doing that. It just seemed like yesterday we were at the opening ceremonies, and Dr. Kelly was firing a fastball across the plate, swearing that she'd never thrown a ball before. She far exceeded either the mayor pro tem or the mayor when it came to throwing a pitch to home plate. So, but anyway, it was great to be able to participate in that and be there for the closeout. They'll take the summer off, do some travel ball, and then come back in the fall for additional. But that's my report. Anybody else got anything? All right, Dr. Kelly.
Right. And I'll make this quick, but I just wanted to announce something to the public that's kind of important to me. So I am a huge fan of Disney movies. And as a result of that, I've been working with some partners out in the community to arrange for a community movie night on Sunday, May 28th, in a couple of weeks. That's going to be the premiere of The Little Mermaid. We are working very hard to make sure that cost is not a barrier. So if anyone is listening and they are interested in participating or coming out and viewing The Little Mermaid with the rest of the community at, once again, the Springs Tap House and Cinema, please send me an email at mkelly@sandyspringsga.gov. You can also text me, and I'm going to give you that number. You can also just shoot me a text at 470-757-8850 if you and your family would like to attend. I'm really excited about this. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, let's move to staff reports by the financials. Ms. Carlisle.
I wanted to address the question that came up during work session regarding the capital contingency. The capital contingency will not have actual activity because we're transferring budget line information. So we will see transfers in and transfers out. So I did a quick analysis to show that number. The FY23 opening balance was the 4469, and if you want to see this, is on page 35 of your financial packet. Was $4,469,206.91. We had transfers in and transfers out of $2,024,486.91. The $2 million was for funding Fire Station number 5, bringing us to the balance shown on your report of $2,444,720 for tonight. I believe it's page 35 of your financial packet of the capital fund for March. Yes. I was just walking you through how we got to that balance, because you're not going to see actual activity. It's budget line transfers in and transfers out. Okay? I did. All right, to the financials. This is the review of the March 2023 unaudited financials. It is as follows. We're at 75% of the fiscal year. Revenues are at 100.29%, and expenditures are at 65.14% of the budget. On page 3 of the financial packet is a 5-year trend of the local option sales tax collections. Just a reminder so that you can see the activities that of the collection. And also to remind you that the amount remitted to the city in February represents the taxes consumers paid in January. So you can see the months remaining to be collected. Revenues that have achieved the FY23 budget are property taxes, electric franchise taxes, gas franchise taxes, insurance premium taxes, alcohol beverage licenses, building permits, and facility rentals. We are starting to see some overrun in operating budgets, but this is not to alarm anyone, but to indicate we are aware, and these overages will be addressed departmentally. Otherwise, the expenditures for each department continue to trend as expected. This concludes the report for March 2023.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. Any questions? All right, Ms. Carlisle, thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of our regular order. We do need an executive session for the purpose of real estate and litigation. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend regular order, move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order, move to executive session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the suspension of regular order and moving to executive session. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. We are in executive session, as is our traditional and normal process. We will simply return to this room at the close of our executive session, return to regular order, and adjourn for the evening.